So here we are again to continue this wonderful day of fabulous people presenting in a workshop. Since this morning, we are talking about sharing, about love, about the importance to give good examples. Now we have the fabulous Peter Sage that I'm lucky enough to have met by chance, and I follow his courses, his self-mastery courses. And this was actually a music he proposed, and I asked to share a wonderful music that makes me calm as well. So Peter Sage, as we can see on the program, an authentic international leader, an international serial entrepreneur, an expert in human behavior and self-mastery, but most importantly, an authentic human being, someone who is crazy enough to give all his fortune to create modes of communication with the moon, to take the energy and help the humanity. I welcome Peter Sage, and I'm very glad that he is here today to inspire us by his knowledge and his personality. Peter.
Oh, Margarita, wonderful introduction. Thank you. And hello, my fellow participants and co-hosts here. And a real pleasure to be able to come to you today. I'm on the sunny island of Tenerife in the Canary Islands. That's where I live here. And I have some fabulous memories of Greece. It was my last TED talk I think I did in Greece, which was on the subject of self-mastery, actually over in Patras. And yes, when I was asked to or invited to speak today, I really wanted to take some time to think about what would probably best serve us in the time that we have. Having looked at the level and caliber of people that are on the event today, all of us are leaders in our own right. All of us have influence in the either the audiences that we're privileged to serve or the markets that we're positioned in. And we'll have people that look to us as examples. And so today I thought I'd give a little bit of an insight into what makes the difference right now for the people that I'm working with that are absolutely crushing it in the current global climate, as opposed to those that are currently being crushed. Because we see that in many different ways. Since the world shifted at the beginning of last year, there's been a lot of people that have either failed to pivot, that went into hibernation thinking the winter would be short, or have really just been caught flat-footed in how the world has adapted to the current situation. And then there's the other kind of people who have really rolled with the punches, that have actually adapted very well and turned this to their advantage. And what I've noticed in looking at those two types of people is that there is very little difference, if any, in the external world. You have people that are being crushed versus people that are crushing it in the same industry, in the same environment, in the same regulations, the same government, everything in the external factors are identical. So what is the difference that makes the difference there? And we see this pre-2020. We've seen examples in our lives where you've had people that were born with all of the advantages. They had the right parents, they had the right start, they had the right education, they have all of the things going for them, the right level of brilliance, but never got the bat off their shoulder and took the swing at life that allowed them to manifest their greatness. And then we see examples of people that had virtually none of that. They had every, I guess, advantage taken away. And they were able to go out and knock the ball out of the park in a way that made the rest of us stand there with open mouths. So what is that? And in my 30-odd years now of being in the industry that I'm in, and I'll give you a little bit of a brief background in a second to share hopefully why I'm a little qualified to make some of the statements I am. I've noticed patterns. One thing that I can tell you is that if something happens once, it's an incident. If it happens twice, it's a coincidence. If it happens more than twice, there's a pattern behind it, and patterns are driven by laws, either natural laws in the physical world, which we've mastered, usually governed by three predominant sciences, which is physics, chemistry, biology. Physics dealing with particles, chemistry dealing with molecules, biology dealing with cells. And we've mastered those rule sets to such an extent we can put a human being in space, or we can repair the human body. But I'm here to tell you, and you may want to tattoo some of this on the inside of your eyelids. I'll have various different phrases I'll be dropping that into. And that is that outer world follows inner world. Case closed. Outer world follows inner world, and the inner world is subject to as many rules that are just as tight as the rules we project into the physical world that we have our academia so focused on, should we say. So before I get into what I believe to be the main laws and rules and observations around people who are really adapting well right now, so that we can look to that for inspiration or be able to close the loop on some of the questions people are asking, I'll give you a very brief background to myself. For some of you unfamiliar with me and my work, I'm not academic. I dropped out of school at 16. I couldn't spell MBA. I started my first company at 17. I've had 26 international companies, I think, since then. Some have been majestic failures. Some have completely wiped me out. Some have been international multi-million-dollar success stories. Some have made millions, tens of millions. Some have lost just about the same amount. Some should have stayed ideas when I was drunk, and pretty much everything in between. And through that journey of actually being out in the trenches, I paralleled that with a passion for personal growth. Personal growth is something that certainly back in my day, 31 years ago now, when I was 17, was mainly for the Americans. Remember that? It's the rah-rah and all of the jumping up and down and the possibility thinking. And the whole industry's changed a lot since then. But I got passionate about trying to become successful. Now, most of that was driven by the fear and insecurities as a young man to try to prove to the world I was good enough. If you haven't figured it out yet, the primary fear of all human beings is the fear that we're not enough. Not good enough, tall enough, short enough, smart enough. All of that, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And it was really a two-edged sword. On one side, it taught me how to become what most people would perceive to be successful. I was a millionaire in my early 20s. I was flying Concorde, buying Ferraris, and doing all the material stuff that most people think that success represents. Completely miserable, unfulfilled, unhappy, stressed, no life. In fact, in my experience of working with many high-level CEOs, billionaires, millionaires, centimillionaires, the pattern is quite the same. Have you noticed that they spend most of their life getting to the top of Success Mountain only to want to jump off because what they thought was there wasn't, because they found there was a huge difference between a life-chasing success and a life-chasing fulfillment. In fact, the joke with a lot of the high-level fellow entrepreneurs that I work with is that most people invest the best part of their life when it comes to entrepreneurship in sacrifice, in working hard, in taking risks, in giving up their relationship, watching their kids grow up, sacrificing their health, so that hopefully they can get to the end of the rainbow one day, cash out or exit or arrive at a place somewhere in the future where they can make enough money to finally pay for their divorce, buy their kids loads of stuff so they love them again, and hire a personal trainer to try to get their health back. I mean, that's kind of the hamster wheel that most people, unfortunately, learn too late. So what is it that really we can learn from the current situation to really thrive in uncertain times? And I start with sort of a throwback to my tribe, which is the entrepreneurs, the crazy bunch, the misfits, the mavericks, because I've been asked throughout my career many times, what is the number one secret to entrepreneurship? What is the thing that stands out? What's the difference that makes the difference? And I know that the vast majority of the audience here come far more from what I would call intrapreneurship, which is innovation within an established organization. And especially when it comes to academia, that can sometimes be an uphill climb. My only association really to the academic world was I was very privileged to be on the board of advisors for INSEAD, one of the top business schools in Europe, based out of Fontainebleau in Paris. And I gave most of the opening and closing keynote addresses to their MBA students for a number of years in not only the French campus, but also in Abu Dhabi. And I noticed that there was some very interesting patterns that were running there. When it comes to teachers, there's essentially two kinds. You have the teachers that really are all about demonstrating their own significance by thinking they need to have the answers because that is their title. Yeah, they are the person at the front of the room that should know the answer. And I have a great belief that says that the goal of every teacher should be for their students to excel them, because everything other than that is ego. And I saw that a lot when entrepreneurs were trying to build businesses for the wrong reasons. But I was asked, what is the defining characteristic? What is the difference that makes the difference? And I'll put it down to, in my experience, there's never one thing. Life is an orchestra, it's not an instrument. But if I was to narrow it down to one thing, then I would say the defining characteristic for entrepreneurs that are successful versus those that aren't is the ability to handle uncertainty. Now, when we apply that to the vast majority of the population over the last 18, 19 months, we see a marked difference between those that are thriving versus those that aren't. Now, the challenge is this. If I was to ask you guys a question, where does certainty exist? We'd come to the sobering realization that it doesn't, not in the physical world. I mean, the fact that the very definition of anything being physical means that its destination is non-physical. Have you figured that out yet? Nothing so permanent as the temporary, I think we say. So when it comes to being able to understand that there is no certainty in life, we need to chunk up to having a slightly different belief system. See, there are overarching beliefs and there are local beliefs. Local beliefs, I believe that person can be trusted. An overarching or a global belief is, I believe that all men are, or I believe that all women are. I believe that French people are, whatever. And we put this overarching belief onto an entire category. Now, if we take that as context, an overarching belief about life will govern the lens with which we look through virtually every aspect of our life. Whether you believe life is hard, whether you believe life is unfair, whether you believe life is a joy. And so I want to defer to probably one of the greatest, most famous academics of our time, Albert Einstein, who had some pretty smart things to say. Never met the guy, but apparently he knew his stuff. And he said the most important question a person can ask in their lifetime, not on a quiz show, not on a Sunday, not when pondering over a glass of wine, in their lifetime, the most important question that they can ask or answer is, do they live in a friendly or a hostile universe? Think about that for a second. You see, that is not a variable. You can't say, well, I live in a friendly universe while the sun's shining, but when the storm clouds come, I change my mind. So if you say I live in a friendly universe and you have that as your frame of reference, when uncertainty shows up, you're looking at it through a different lens. See, for 31 years now in personal growth, I've lived as what I call an inverse paranoid. I believe the entire universe, or whatever label you want to call this existence that we have, is involved in a secret and hidden conspiracy to make me happy and successful. Now, that doesn't mean to say I don't have challenges or problems or any of the stuff that is inherent in the game. It means that when that happens, I look for a higher level of meaning. And looking through the lens of a friendly universe, I believe that things happen for our benefit. Now, if I look through the opposite lens, I live in a fear-based universe, a hostile universe, more the Darwinian mentality, the survival of the fittest, the separatist, materialist level. I have to look at everything as a potential threat, a fear-based lens. Why? Because everything out there with teeth can kill me. Everything there is a challenge. Everything is, every person for themselves. Everything has an egocentric agenda. Whereas if I believe that I live in a friendly universe, I look at life through a very different lens. Now, I personally believe that we have a purpose here. And I don't want to get too esoteric. I want to keep this grounded for the purposes of the talk here. But let's just go to the last 400 million years of fossil records as a reference. If we look at the evolution of life on this planet, we will see that, right, I mean, way back, we'd have bacteria, but the first single-celled organism, an amoeba. If we look at 400 million years later, the human body, 50 to 75 trillion cells. What's the difference? There's a key difference. And the difference that very few people look at or take the time to observe really gives a clue as to why I believe we're here. And that is that if you take 50 to 75 trillion individual amoebas and you put one food source there, what do you have? I'll tell you, you have war. Survival of the fittest, every man for themselves. If you doubt that, take a pack of hungry dogs and throw one bone, you'll see what happens. Now, if you take the human body and one food source, you don't have that going on. You don't have the liver and the spleen suddenly ganging up against the heart and the kidneys to see who can get more hemoglobin out of the blood. That doesn't work. No. So what makes evolution possible? What makes the human body possible? What makes this path of evolution through life over the last 400 years possible? It's one word: cooperation. See, with that cooperation, you're back to living in a hostile universe. But that's not the direction of travel that life is evolving on. So if you take the word cooperation and you extrapolate that to its logical conclusion, for me as a simple guy, I kind of hit the word love. What are we really here to do? We're here to learn how to love. We're here to learn how to cooperate. So if you take the human body and you take two blood cells, red blood cell and white blood cell, and they're going through the human body, and let's say they were to meet. And here we have two different blood cells, two different colors, born at different times, on different pathways and journeys with different jobs to do. One delivers oxygen to the body, the other takes bacteria out of the blood and dumps it in the lymph. Both going to die at different times. Now, if they were to meet in the bloodstream, they would have an individual sense of identity about themselves, wouldn't they? And they'd turn around and say, "Hey, white blood cell, how you doing?" Red blood cell will turn around and say, "Wow, talking blood cell." But no, it'd turn around and say, "Wow, hey, white blood cell, hey, red blood cell." They'd have a conversation. Now, let's take the people on this Zoom call. Here we are, different colors, different ages, born at different times, different paths in life, different jobs to do, different focuses, going to die at different times. Now, what if there's a possibility you and I were just individual blood cells in the universal body of consciousness? Would that upset people? Well, it would certainly confuse those that thought they lived in a hostile universe. Those that live in a friendly universe wouldn't have as much of a belief bridge to jump across. It would make sense. There'd be a resonance of truth that they would feel, not calculate. And so if that's the case, what does the game become? The game becomes we're here to learn how to grow into, or evolve into higher levels of consciousness. Now, when we look at growth, we can go to the physical world and take some examples, because we live in a fractal expression of the non-physical. As Einstein said again, the sole governing agency of the particle is the field, the wave. In other words, the non-physical gives birth to the physical, which makes sense. Everything physical is destination to be non-physical. How do you kill a spirit? So from that side, what can we learn? Well, if the game here is to learn how to grow, we only grow through challenge. Go to the physical body. Now, you put the body in the gym, what happens? You put it in there once, you don't get fit, you get sore, which is why most people don't go. But we know if you challenge the body and push it past its limits, it is pre-programmed as part of the rule set to return with a better, stronger version of itself. Now, what can we learn from that? Well, again, go to nature. The strongest trees, my friends, grow in the strongest winds, not the best soil. So if we're here to grow and we are in an experience that allows us to do that, let's go back to the fractal expression. Why did we invent schools, universities? colleges? Why did they materialize in the human experience? Well, I believe it's because we're in one. I call this experience Earth School, title of my next book. And in Earth School, our job is to grow, and we grow through challenge. Now, nature lends itself to that hypothesis. We know if we take a mammal, and that mammal is exposed to an external situation that it perceives as a threat, it will lose 30% of its muscle strength. It'll lose 30% of its ability to respond. It'll go into a panic state. Some will play possum. They'll lose that much of they'll just try to play dead and hope they get walked past. If we take a mammal, of which we fall under that category, and they see the same external situation, not as a threat, but as a challenge, they will gain 30% muscle strength in that moment. Their cognitive functions will focus. Their biochemistry will adapt to rising to that challenge rather than retreating from that challenge. Now we go back to how many of those people over the last 19, 18 months have seen the outside world as a threat. Well, if you're convinced that some big, scary, invisible microbe running around going to jump on you, you're going to look at life more from a fear-based reality than rising to the challenge reality. If you see the government as conspiring against your business with economic restraints and lockdowns and everything else, you are going to start looking at life through a fear-based lens, not a challenge-based lens. Is it any wonder we see two different types of people in the current situation, regardless of the same circumstances that are put on them? So what is the key to moving forward? Well, I tend to chunk it into what I call the difference between biological maturity and emotional maturity. And they're two very different things. And unfortunately, they're not correlated. And if you've noticed that, biological maturity, we don't get to vote on. Sorry, I don't care how many creams you put on. I don't care how many vitamins you take. At some point, 50 years from now, you're going to look different. Right? It's part of the rule set. But emotional maturity is a choice. Anybody ever known of any emotional teenagers running around in some very adult bodies? So what are some of the keys to emotional maturity? Well, one of the first ones, which I believe would do well if we actually did teach it in schools, is the day that we wake up and we're actually comfortable not being liked. Oh, how many people felt that one? Being comfortable not being liked. Now, that doesn't mean to say you take pride in being unliked. That's a different set of values. But most people, in my opinion, are running around as this giant adaptation machine, trying to get approval, acceptance, validation, not wanting to trigger a rejection response because they can't handle rejection. And so we become this giant adaptation machine, this chameleon, which by its very definition means that we're automatically inauthentic. And most people aren't doing that because they're dishonest or not good people. They're doing it because they're scared of not fitting in. They're scared of the fear we're not enough, so they try to adapt to try to prove they are. And when you can finally grow up to the day where you are very comfortable not being liked, then you can have that level of authenticity, which paradoxically makes more people attracted to you. So how do you do that? Well, you have to get out of something called goop. And goop is a nasty, sticky, horrible substance most people spend their life swimming in. Goop stands for the good opinion of other people. So how do you get out of goop? I'll give you an analogy, and hopefully for those that are aware enough, it'll start to pull the foundations out. I believe that we all star in a movie called the movie of our life. And I'm fairly certain that you're the star of that movie because I think you're the only person that's in every single scene of that movie. Have you noticed that? Now, if you're starring in the movie of your life, that means by definition, everybody else can only play one of two roles. There's no co-stars. You're the star of your movie, which means there can either be, at best, a handful of supporting cast, a spouse, a sibling, best friend, boss, whatever it may be. But the vast, vast majority of people that come into your movie through your lifetime are nothing more than film extras in your movie. Now, what is the definition of a film extra? Simple. Somebody you're not thinking about when they're not in your scene. By that definition, how many people are film extras? Now, here's the challenge. Because we're walking around as the star of our movie, we actually think that everybody else sees us as the star of our movie. But they don't, because they happen to be starring in a different movie, do they not? What movie are they starring in? Clearly their own. Which means by definition, we play one of two roles in everybody else's movie. At best, we are a supporting cast, maybe for a handful of people. But the vast majority of people that we adapt our behavior to try to win approval, recognition, validation from, we are nothing more than film extras in their movie. Which essentially means if you want to get out of goop, ladies and gentlemen, you need to come to the sobering, or at least refreshing from my side, realization that most people don't care enough about you to bother to even give an opinion. Why? Because they're too busy being worried about what they think you're thinking of them. Does that make sense? Now, when you come to that appreciation, you can start letting go of the good opinion of others and start living your life on purpose with your own sense of truth and passion. Because everybody's all talking about, the truth this, the truth that. Would you like to know, as a bonus on today's session, what the truth with a capital T is? Because I actually know. Yes, I have the arrogance to tell you I know the truth. That truth that people have looked up for generations into the stars and pondered, or the one that most people try to avoid and distract themselves from, even entertaining the question. The truth with a capital T, finally, is this. We don't know the truth. That's the truth. The best that we can do is walk our own truth on what is right for us in the service of growth and contribution. Why? Because that is the two laws that nature operates by. Everything in nature grows and contributes, or it's taken out of the food chain. We think we're different for some reason. So one of the first keys to emotional maturity is learning that, getting out of the good opinion of others and understanding that alone, through being an inspiration to others, which naturally happens when you do that, because that's what everybody else is looking for. Rather than running around trying to raise our own significance, when we play the game and switch it 180 degrees by playing the game of raising the significance of others, by walking into their movie and making them feel like the star, not at the expense of being an unpaid film extra, but because our truth is to, certainly as leaders in the academic world, is to allow them our shoulders to stand on so that they can see further than us. And from that place, we walk more of our own truth. Now, one of the other keys to emotional maturity is, or certainly one of the demarcations in the person's life on that path, one of the most powerful days, again, in a human being's life, is the day they wake up to the realization that life is a growth-centric experience, not a comfort-centric experience. And we get seduced a lot of the time into thinking that comfort is the answer. And the reason for that is because we as human beings are the epitome of the encapsulation of physical and non-physical. See, if I was to take Tony on here, for example, and I was to look at Tony and I was to say, what makes Tony Tony? Well, it's not the body, because Tony's got a different body now to when he was 5 years old, I assume. What makes Tony Tony is the non-physical. It's his personality. It's his sense of humor. It's his hopes, his dreams, his values. All of that stuff, the non-physical, is what makes Tony Tony. If I was to take that out of Tony and I was to put it into Steen, then Tony would be Steen with a different body. Would he not? It's just how it happens. Now, question for you. How much non-physical can you fit in a matchbox? All of it. So you can't wrap your head around a third dimensional projection of material reality into non-physical, but we know as human beings, we are the encapsulation of both. In fact, is it not given in the name? See, human lends itself to form. Being lends itself to non-form. We are both together. So if we're identified more with the human side, the physical world, the body, we're seduced into thinking life is comfort-centric. Why? Because our body has a nervous system, and that nervous system is hardwired for comfort. Very useful when it comes to not sitting on an ant's nest or standing too close to a fire. So if we identify more with the physical form of who we are naturally seeking comfort. Well, good luck with that. If we identify with who we are internally, without getting into labels, let's just call it the soul, the essence of who we are, the being. And again, I'm not putting any overlay on that. Pick a word that suits. I think the travesty of humanity is the fact that we've spent centuries going to war and killing each other over whose label for the non-physical is right. So if you're more associated to who we are at our core, our essence, our soul is wired for growth. And growth comes through challenge. So if you are resisting the growth because you're more associated with the form, therefore you're seeking comfort, you're going to have a tough life. You're going to be able to resist challenge. You're going to see them as threats. You're going to go weak rather than rise. See, all of us right now have an opportunity as leaders in our field to demonstrate to those people that don't have these awarenesses an opportunity to stand up. Now, I'll give one caveat. We have no right to impose our model of the world onto other people. They're living their truth. And some people were born to star in a drama, a soap opera, a horror show. Have you noticed that? You can send them love, you can hold a space, but you've got no right to rewrite their script. You only have the right to be the example and the invitation. And a lot of people, including ourselves in our past, if we look back, unfortunately have to hit their head on the sidewalk in order to learn how to tie their shoelaces. We have no right to take people's lessons away. But when it comes to being that example, I'll share one. I had a friend of mine, former business partner in Poland, Marius, calls me about a year ago. Says, Peter, I'm having a real hard time. I can't sleep. I'm stressed out of my mind. You're the only person I can call to speak to you right now. I need help. I'm like, buddy, what's up? He said, I had a lump in my chest. It was bothering me. I thought it would go away. It didn't. It got bigger. We went to the doctors and they've taken a sample for a biopsy. They think it could be cancerous. I've got to wait 2 weeks for the results. I can't sleep. I'm like, let me ask you a question. What are you afraid of? Afraid of dying. I says, I know you. In all fairness, and excuse the language, but I'll quote. I said, that's bullshit. I says, we're all going to die. What are you really afraid of? He says, well, I'm more afraid of leaving my 2 sons fatherless. I've got 2 great boys, knew them well. One was 9, one was 11. Great boys. I says, well, at some point, do you want to leave them fatherless? So what do you mean? I said, well, from my perspective, it's every parent's wish that their children outlive them. I said, so you just don't want it to be now. But unfortunately, we never get to choose when, but at some point, do you want them to be fatherless? He says, well, in that context, yes. I says, okay, so stay with me here. I said, let's say that happens, whether it's 10 years, 50 years, doesn't matter. Let's hope that that's a scenario in the future. No parent wants to bury their kid. I said, and at that point, let's go 5 years past the date that you film the final scene in your movie before you go pick up another script or whatever your belief system. Let's say it's 5 years past that date and your sons have a challenge. Are they likely to have challenges in their life if they're in Earth School? Of course, it's part of the inherent syllabus. Well, yes, let's say it's 5 years past that time. Let's not pick a health challenge. It's too close to home. Let's say, I don't know, let's pick divorce. Is that a potential? Let's say 5 years after you've gone, your son goes through a nasty divorce. I said, is there anything you can do to help them at that point? He's going, well, no, not 5 years after I've gone. I says, well, actually, you're wrong. There is. There's something you can do, and it starts now. I said, you won't be there physically, but you can give them a really good lesson. Imagine 5 years later, he's going through this divorce and your brother turns around and says, he's stressed out of his mind, and he's pulling his hair out, and his life's upside down, and this divorce is just really nasty. And his other brother turns around and says, hey, do you remember that time when Dad thought he had cancer? How did he show up? He was calm. He was like, son, hey, listen, don't worry. Whatever it is, we'll get through this. I'm sure it's nothing. And even if it is, we'll figure it out. So you have the opportunity right now to give your sons the lessons that they can use long after you've gone, by facing uncertainty in a way that is the example and therefore the invitation. See, every single one of us right now is operating in a climate where a lot of people are worried. And as members of the community, as members of the academic society or our own communities where people look up to us for answers, or people look to us as somebody who leads our field, we have the opportunity right now to do what Marius did 18 months ago. And by the way, he actually called me yesterday. He's fine. A year later, 2 weeks later, it came back. It was benign. They removed it. Nothing happened since. But right now, we have the ability to be that person that our students look to, that our colleagues look to. Oh my God, what's happening? Oh, there's some new weird BS on the media that's telling us this. There's some new that. Oh, I know a person whose second cousin died of COVID. Whatever it may be. We have the opportunity to stand strong. Say, listen, there's no certainty in life. This is why we're here. This is what we're trained for. This is why we show up. This is the weight in the bar, in the gym. You just forgot you're an athlete. Because if you're looking at it from the perspective of the muscle fiber, you're going to be sending messages to the brain. Stop. I'm being broken down. Send pain signals. What are you doing? As you try to bust out that last rep on the bar. But if you take the mindset of the athlete, you're proud. You just annihilated your arms and can't lift them for 10 minutes because you're here to get the gold medal. And I assert that every one of us are here to get the gold medal in our own movie. We're here to get that Oscar. We're here to be the example to others in the invitation. And you wouldn't have come across me or my work or been put together through whatever label you want to call it serendipitously on this call, had that not been the case, I assert. So in the last few minutes that we have here together, I want to be respectful of the schedule and the time. I just want to remind us that we don't live in a comfort-centric experience. That doesn't mean to say we can't be comfortable. It means to say it's not its purpose. So stop seeking it. It's like saying that, is the purpose of school to be happy? No, the purpose of school isn't to be happy. It doesn't mean to say you can't be happy going through school, but it's not its purpose. The purpose of school is to provide an environment where you can use free will to make choices that support an education. And you can use free will to do with what you wish. You can choose to skip class, not revise, go out and party, and that will likely lead to one level of result. You can choose to revise, show up, work hard, apply yourself, and that'll likely lead to a different result. But the environment is the environment. We're here in Earth School. The environment is the environment. We can choose to show up and be the best version of ourselves, knowing that we're going to make mistakes because sometimes we get more learning from the wrong answers we give in class than the right answers. That's okay. If you're getting all the answers right, you're in the wrong class. We can choose to let go of the good opinion of others and realize that everybody's doing the same thing. They're searching for significance and validation and approval. And when we let go of the need for that, but start looking at people with understanding, tolerance, compassion, humility, we set far more of a path for their truth, for them to follow, than we could being the imposition. I hope that helps. I hope I've given some sort of insight there into a little bit about this crazy experience called human, and hopefully touch some level of resonance there that if you're interested, feel free to follow my work. I put a lot of stuff out there on social, and it'd be a real pleasure to hopefully leave a small thumbprint here on the memory or the notepads in a way that allows you to go give the best of who you are and the gifts that you all have individually to the world in a way that allows it to shine in uncertain times. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much, dear Peter. Thank you so much for being here, facing uncertainty, provoke our own positive or negative life that is going to follow. This is amazing. I mean, earlier we talked with Michael as well, and I said it as well. that we academics need some assistance, because it's difficult. We are facing a global difficult time. So I would say that Peter is also someone to follow, and his courses and what he does. I don't know for how long we will be happy, because he does a million things at the same time. I'm privileged to follow his courses